nothing but the truth, so you got it.
I do.
Please be seated. Now, ma'am, if you would, can you state your full name and spell your last name, please?
My name is Emily Kurek, and that's K-U-R-U-C.
Okay. And Ms. Kurek, were you formerly known as Emily Taylor?
Yes, I was.
Is that your maiden name?
Yes, that was my maiden name.
And when did you get married?
In October of 2014.
And where do you work, ma'am?
I'm employed with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Division of Forensic Sciences, also known as the State Crime Lab.
And what exactly do you do there?
I'm employed as a latent print examiner. My duties as a latent print examiner include processing physical items of evidence to develop latent prints, analyzing and comparing those latent prints to known prints or known exemplars, searching latent prints on the AFIS databases, which is the Automated Fingerprint Identification System, and testifying in court to my results.
All right. And can you briefly describe your educational background that allows you to do what you do at the crime lab?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice with a concentration in forensic investigations from Jacksonville State University in Jacksonville, Alabama. Since being employed with the crime lab, I was a laboratory technician for several years before I became a latent print examiner. Also, I completed our on-the-job training program for a latent print examiner, which involved approximately a year and a half. During that course of study, there were numerous topics, including the history of the use of fingerprints for identification, the structure and formation of friction-ridged skin, which is the skin on the palms of your hands and soles of your feet, various processing techniques, and learning about the analysis and comparison of latent prints to known prints as well.
All right. And just so we're clear, in addition to looking at prints and examining prints and comparing prints, do you also process items for latent fingerprints?
Yes, I do.
And have you been trained in that area?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And do you belong to any professional organizations?
Yes, I'm a member of the IAI, which is the International Association for Identification. And in 2004, September of 2004, I achieved my certification through them as a latent print examiner.
And have you either formally or informally taught others in the areas of latent print examination or latent print processing?
Yes, I have. For the last several years, I have participated as a primary trainer for 5 or 6 of our new latent print examiners at the lab, covering various topics. Just depends. So sometimes I would teach about processing for latent prints, and then other times I would instruct on comparisons or also on the use of the AFIS systems.
And have you ever testified as an expert in court before?
Yes, I have.
And about how many times?
About 14 times.
And what jurisdictions or courts?
There are several. Would you like me to list all of them?
Just briefly describe a few.
Okay. Fulton, Clayton, and DeKalb counties, Franklin, Walton, Richmond, Gordon, Bartow, Stevens, Telfair. I think that's all of them.
Okay, thank you. And what field of expertise were you qualified as an expert?
Just generally phrased somewhat differently, each time, but in general it was for the field of latent print examinations.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time we would like to tender Ms. Emily Kurek, Taylor Kurek, as an expert in the field of latent print examination as well as latent print processing.
Any objection?
No, sir, Your Honor.
The witness will be allowed to testify as an expert in the area of latent print examination and latent print processing.
Thank you. Ma'am, back on March 28, 2011, did you work at the crime same position you are now?
Yes, I became a latent print examiner in 2008, so yes.
And I don't know if I asked that, how much experience have you had as a latent print examiner?
In August of 2008 was when my training began as a latent print examiner.
Okay. And it's been continuous through today?
Yes.
And back on March 28, 2011, did you receive evidence from the GBI agent Hillsman regarding the murder of Officer Buddy Christian and the shooting of Officer Tony Allen?
Yes.
Okay. And also the kidnapping and armed robbery of Jadon Brooks. Did you receive evidence regarding those cases?
Yes, I did.
And what sort of evidence did you receive?
Myself personally, or the
Yeah,
lab?
that you actually examined and looked at.
I received a pistol, the magazine that goes with the pistol, 8 cartridges, a roll of duct tape, and a package containing several strips of duct tape.
Okay. Let me show you what's been marked, and it's already been tendered as State's Exhibit 86 and the State's Exhibit 87. And I'll ask if you recognize those items.
Do you need me to open and look as well?
First, look at the packaging.
Okay.
And then you can look inside.
Yes, I do.
Okay. With respect to State's Exhibit 86, I believe the paper bag,
Yes.
that's already been tendered as a roll of duct tape recovered from the floorboard of a Cadillac. Do you recognize that item?
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize that item?
Affixed to the outside is the barcode from the GBI Crime Lab, which has the unique crime lab case number and the unique item number for this particular item.
All right. And if you wouldn't mind, remove the item that's already been tendered. And is that the item that you process for latent prints?
Yes, it is.
And can you describe the process that you went through to do that?
For this particular item, I processed it with a technique referred to as cyanoacrylate fuming, also known as superglue fuming. Then it was treated with a fluorescent dye stain, and that was it on this one.
All right. And one thing I neglected to ask you, when you initially received the package, were there any signs of damage or tampering to this item?
No, if there had been signs of damage or tears, we would have noted that, and there would have been a photograph in the case file. It had been in another section, so their seal was present, but it was intact.
Okay, thank you. Now, you described the process you used in processing this particular item.
Yes.
Were you able to obtain any latent prints off this roll of tape?
Yes.
And were they usable or sufficient quality for Athens?
After I examined or analyzed the latent print that was developed on the duct tape, I determined it to be of no value.
Okay. And just briefly describe what you mean by no value.
Our policy has changed recently. Now, current reports might indicate of value or no value for identification. However, at this time, it was referred to as no value or value for comparison, which would indicate that, so for this one in particular, I said it was of no value, which would indicate that there was a partial print there, but there was not enough clear information in that print in order to achieve any sort of comparison to a known print.
And is that uncommon in your line of work?
No, it's not.
Now, with respect to State's Exhibit 87, the pizza box, do you recognize that item?
Yes, I do.
All right. And how do you recognize that item?
In the same way, there's a GBI Crime Lab barcode here with that same unique case number and item number.
All right. And did you, in fact, and let me go back. When you received the item, was it packaged as it is today?
When I received it, yes, it was.
All right. And were there any signs of damage or tampering to this particular item?
No, I did not note any.
Okay. Now, when you looked at these items, what did you do?
For these items, I can sort of hold this up here. It went through the same process as the roll with cyanoacrylate fuming as well as the fluorescent dye stain. However, these being actual strips that were separate from the roll, they were also treated with what we refer to as a sticky side powder. So it's a special liquid powder that can develop latent prints on the adhesive side or the sticky side of tape.
And is that the process you use to process the latent prints?
Yes.
And were you able to recover any latent prints?
Yes, there were latent prints developed on these pieces.
Okay. And were these prints of sufficient quality for comparison purposes or Athens purposes?
No, based upon my analysis, these were of no value for comparison as well.
Okay. Now, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 913. And this item has been previously tendered as a .40 caliber handgun that was recovered at 102 Creekstone off a coffee table. Do you recognize that item?
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize that specific item?
In the same way, I will direct your attention to the Crime Lab barcode here with the unique case number.
All right. And if you don't mind, can you open it and look at the contents? And are those the items you received for latent print examination?
Yes, they are.
And when you received this particular package, was it packaged in the same manner?
Yes.
Did you notice any damage or tampering to the item?
No, I did not.
When you received this item, can you go through the process you used to process these items for latent prints?
The pistol and the magazine and the cartridges were all processed using the same procedure I spoke about. They were all processed with cyanoacrylate fuming and then the fluorescent dye stain. And then the cartridges alone went on to be treated with gun blue.
All right. And can you briefly describe when you use these chemicals, how long does it take? Are you using instruments to assist you? Can you kind of go into a little bit more detail?
Sure. For cyanoacrylate fuming, we have a special chamber where the evidence is placed inside. There is a heating element in the bottom. A tray of super glue is set on the heating element. Once the super glue heats to a certain temperature, it starts to give off gas. It'll sort of look like smoke. And that smoke, or the fumes of the super glue, will circulate within the chamber and adhere to any latent print residue. The time that this takes may vary. We stand there and watch this process happen because you want to stop it when you start to see development, because it is possible to overfume. So once those items are finished, then they are reviewed with visual examination, perhaps alternate light source to get good clarity. At the crime lab, we don't do powder and lifting, so what you might be familiar with seeing on television with the fingerprint powder and brush and then the lifting tape. We document latent prints that we develop with high-resolution digital photography. So any positive results that are noted on the items as we go along these processes are photographed to then later be analyzed. Then after the superglue fuming comes the fluorescent dye stain, and it is a specific dye stain that it reacts to the superglue itself. So it just helps us add a little better contrast so that if maybe it was a white or a lighter color background, the dye stain would allow us to visualize that better. For the cartridges, they're treated with a chemical called gum glue, which actually etches the metal. So the latent print residue protects the metal and sort of develops a negative impression if there's any impressions on there.
All right. And did you go through this process not only with the handgun, but the magazine as well as the 8 live rounds?
Yes.
And were they all placed together at the same time, or did you do them separately?
The chamber is large enough where you can position items so that there's circulation around. So yes, they were all placed in at the same time.
All right. And were you able to develop any latent prints on any of these items?
Yes.
And which item did you develop a latent print off of?
There were latent prints developed on the pistol, the magazine, and 3 of the cartridges.
Now, with regard to the pistol, how many latent prints did you get off the pistol?
I don't have it noted specifically how many there were from the pistol. There were at least 1, perhaps 2 or 3, but after my analysis, they were all determined to be of no value for comparison.
On the pistol?
On the pistol.
Okay. What about the 8 live rounds?
For the 3 that were actually positive, those latent prints were also determined to be of no value for comparison.
And again, just to clarify, that just means there's not enough information for you to make a comparison.
That's correct.
Or submit to APHIS.
Correct. It would have been just a few ridges or perhaps enough to see that there was a print there, but not enough detail to achieve a comparison, and certainly not enough detail for an APHIS search.
All right. Now, what about the magazine? And can you hold up that item?
Certainly. There was 1 latent print developed on the magazine that I determined to be of value for comparison.
And can you show the jury approximately what location?
If you notice the holes along the sides and the numbers, if you're familiar with a pistol magazine, this particular latent print is in between the 9 and the 11 on the side of the magazine here.
Now, were you able to look at the print and make a determination whether it was something you could use for comparison?
Yes, at the time of my initial analysis, I could tell that there was enough information there, there's enough clarity, enough minutia in order to achieve a comparison. However, I wasn't certain at the time whether it was a part of a finger or if it was going to be a part of a palm.
Okay, so at this point, you felt there were ridges, but you weren't sure exactly what part of the hand it was from.
That's correct. During analysis, when I examined the different levels of detail, the first level of detail being the ridge flow, I could see that this involved a delta area, which is a focal point that we look for to sort of give us an idea where a latent print comes from on a hand or a finger. However, there was no indication of a pattern type. So unfortunately, you could have any number of delta areas on the fingers or the palms. So you really wouldn't know where it comes from exactly without a lot more of the prints until you have the the known prints of the exemplars side by side.
All right. Now, you discussed early in your testimony that you are provided certain information as far as who the victims are in these cases that you're working. Do you sometimes also receive the names of suspects?
Yes, our submission form has areas where they can indicate the victim or the subject.
And was there a name attached to this case as far as a suspect?
Yes, there was.
And what was that name?
Jamie Hood.
Okay. So with regard to this information you are given when you're working on your case, do you have access to known latent prints of individuals?
And knowns wouldn't be latent prints, but known exemplars, fingerprint cards, yes.
Right, I'm sorry, I misspoke. So tell us about that process. How are records stored, and how do you have access to these records?
There is a database which individuals in the database have a Georgia state identification number associated with that. If I'm provided with that information, I do have access to be able to look up fingerprint records that are associated with that particular SID number. Then I can print those records at the lab.
Okay. And with regard to these prints, are these digital prints in a digital database?
There was, a few years ago, they did a conversion, and I say they, that being our GCIC, the Georgia Crime Information Center, did a project where all of the old records, which were ink and paper rolled, they scanned all those into a digital format. It's my understanding most agencies these days use what is referred to as a live scan device, which is a digital means of rolling the fingerprints across. It doesn't use the ink and paper, and so it does create digital images that are printed on the cards.
All right. And just to be clear, in this case, you printed off a set of known prints from this digital database, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, I'd like to show Ms. Kerr the State's Exhibit 1159. Ms. Kerr, first of all, do you recognize State's Exhibit 1159?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize it to be?
I recognize this to be the envelope. This is my handwriting where I sealed the fingerprint card bearing the name Jamie Hood.
And if you don't mind, can you open up the envelope and look at the content and stuff?
You have
You
a
need them.
knife, anything, or I can just...
And without showing that right now at this point to the jury, just look at it yourself.
Sure.
And do you recognize the content of that envelope?
Yes, I do.
And is that in fact the fingerprint card you printed off the state database?
Yes, it is. It has my initials on it and also where I wrote the unique GBI Crime Lab case number and the item number.
And ma'am, are you aware if these fingerprints, are they made at or near the time the fingerprints are taken, these digital scans?
Yes, it's my understanding that they are sent digitally once they are taken.
And are they made by or from information from a person with a knowledge or business duty to record these prints?
Yes, they are.
And are they kept in the regular course of business of law enforcement agencies as well as the state of Georgia?
Yes, they are.
And is it the regular practice to record and to retain these fingerprint records by the state of Georgia and law enforcement agencies?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, at this time we would like to tender a State's Exhibit 1159.
Objection. No, sir, Your Honor.
Now, once you receive this fingerprint card, what is the process you go through with regard to comparing items?
prior to the comparison to the known prints, I perform an analysis of the latent prints, which I had mentioned that after having performed that procedure, I determined the latent print to be of value. The comparison involves a side-by-side viewing of the latent print compared to the known print. Any information, minutia, ridge features, ridge flow that I find in the latent print, I'm looking to the known prints to see if there is anything that looks similar. Then once I find something that looks similar, then I move further into those details in order to achieve identification.
Now, did you prepare some visual aids to help you explain this process for your testimony here today?
Yes, I did.
And Your Honor, at this time I'd like to show the witness states exhibits 1152 through 1158. Do you recognize items 1152 through 1158?
Yes, I do.
Are these visual aids that you prepared for your testimony here today?
Yes, they are.
And do they fairly and accurately represent the process you went through in comparing the unknown latent print off the magazine with the known print of Mr. Jamie Donnell Hood?
Yes, they do.
And would these visual aids assist you in explaining to the jury what you did?
Yes.
Your Honor, the state moves to tender state's exhibits 1152 through 1158 for demonstrative purposes.
Any objection? No, sir, Your Honor. They're admitted for demonstrative purposes.
Now, starting with state's exhibit 1152, these unique case numbers, is that what you use to differentiate the many cases that you work on?
Yes.
And is this a way that you have to make sure you don't confuse or mix up cases that you work on?
Yes, when items are submitted to the crime laboratory, they come to our evidence receiving section, and as new cases arrive, they are given a new unique crime lab case number within our laboratory information management system. And also, if there are additional items that come in on existing cases, then those are also given additional item numbers within an existing case.
Thank you. Now, with respect to state's exhibit 1153, can you tell us what we're viewing in this slide?
This slide shows the side of the magazine, and where I mentioned before, I'll direct your attention to the area between the numbers 9 and 11. The scale that you see there on the side is pointing toward the latent print itself. Further slides will provide more clarity.
In state's exhibit 1154, let me try to zoom in on this.
In this photograph, I actually flipped the photograph around so that it would put the latent print in more of a proper orientation, and the blue box highlights the area where the latent print is.
Now, the sort of faint black ridges, is that the aspect of the latent fingerprint that you're focusing on?
Yes, those are the friction ridges.
And state's exhibit 1155, is this the fingerprint card that you printed off?
Yes, this is a scanned in version of that same card that I just removed from the envelope. The red box is highlighting the right thumb, which is to indicate that this is the portion we'll be comparing to.
And what was it about this right thumb that kind of drew your attention to this?
As I mentioned earlier, the latent print itself didn't provide a lot of ridge flow clues, but it did appear to be a delta area. And a delta area is a convergence of three ridge flows. So on this particular latent print, or
I don't mean to interrupt you, there's a laser pointer in front of you.
Thank you. On this particular known print, this is a delta area. You can see on the one next to it, there are actually two delta areas. So it's where these ridges flow this way, these other ridges are flowing up here, and the ones on the inside are flowing around. So it's a convergence area. I was looking at all the delta areas on this particular card, and once I looked further into this area is when I began to compare more detail.
And State's Exhibit 1156, is that sort of what you were just discussing?
Yes.
With that?
This photo is an enlargement of just the thumb by itself, and then the red box highlights the area that will represent the comparison.
And State's Exhibit 1157, what is this slide?
This slide was more just to demonstrate, showing you side by side the latent print area on the left and then the known print area on the right.
And State's Exhibit 1158, can you describe what we're viewing in this slide?
This slide on the left is that blue box that I mentioned earlier that was highlighting the area. That is actually this area enlarged a little further. Also, the photograph is adjusted for contrast. On the right side is that red box highlighted area from the known print enlarged so that I could put them side by side and show you the ridges and the ridge features that I compared.
And based on your training, based on your experience, based on your examination of the unknown print on the magazine and the known right thumbprint of Mr. Jamie Donnell Hood, did you form any opinions or conclusions as a result?
Yes, I did.
And what was that opinion?
I determined that the latent print from the magazine is identified to the right thumb of the fingerprint card bearing the name Jamie Hood.
And did you reduce your testing and your findings in a written official GBI forensic report?
Yes, I did.
And was the testing process as well as your findings written on two separate reports?
Yes.
And can you explain why that is?
The items were processed for latent prints when they were received. Then the known prints were compared at a later date, so there are two reports.
I'd like to show you what's been marked States Exhibits 1160 and 1161. Spirit, I would ask you to recognize States Exhibits 1160 and 1161.
Yes, I do.
Okay. And what are these documents?
States Exhibit 1160 is a report that I issued on January 16th, 2014.
And what does that consist of?
Would you like me to read the results, or?
Well, does it have your result?
Yes, it does. The report itself has victims and subjects listed at the top. Next is a list of the evidence that I examined for this particular report. And following that are my results and conclusions.
Okay. And does it fairly and accurately reflect your results?
Yes, they do.
And with regards to States Exhibit 1161, what is that document?
This document is a report that I issued dated May 4th, 2011. It is formatted in the same way with the victim and subject's names listed at the top, the descriptions of the evidence items that I examined, followed by my results and conclusions.
And does that report also reflect the process you went through in identifying the latent print on the magazine?
Yes.
As well as the other items?
Yes, it does.
All right, this time, state moves to tender States Exhibits 1160 and 1161.
Any objection?
No, sir, Your Honor.
One moment. Nothing further. Thank you.
On the lights, you may cross-examine.
Morning, Ms. Taylor.
Good morning.
Ma'am, how did you come to get involved in this case, ma'am?
Through my employment with the GBI Crime Laboratory.
Okay. Who was the agent who you talked to about the evidence in this case?
I don't have information of having spoken with any particular agents. The submission forms that I have list Trent Hilsman as the agent who submitted evidence.
Did you see a change of custody? Do you have anything on change of custody, ma'am?
Do you mean internal chain of custody within the laboratory?
No. Did you get any change of custody pertaining to the item that you examined?
The chain of custody that I have is the internal chain of custody for the laboratory. Any chain of custody that involves the item prior to it coming to the laboratory, I do not have.
Why not?
If they submitted it, it would have been scanned into the case file. I'm not sure. It would have been a document of theirs that they would keep in their case file.
Is it common practice to receive the chain of custody to make sure what the item was, where they was kept at, and who delivered the item? Is that proper procedure?
It certainly is within the GBI Crime Lab. We do maintain a chain of custody based upon those barcodes. Each agency has their own method for establishing and keeping up with their chain of custody.
So why wasn't it done in this case?
I'm going to object basically on two reasons. Number one, it's been asked and answered. And secondly, on non-fungible items, chain of custody doesn't even apply. This has already been tendered without objection.
Sustained.
Ma'am, I see you stated that you done some examination on the duct tape.
Yes.
Right. And I also see that you said you had some latent prints on that duct tape. Is that correct, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay. Who fingerprint was that?
As I mentioned earlier, based upon my analysis of the latent prints that were developed on the duct tape, they were of no value for comparison. Therefore, I did not make a determination. I didn't I didn't make a comparison to even achieve a determination as to whose prints they were.
Okay, but you did have prints on now, correct now?
Yes, there were latents of partial value, or partial latent prints rather, on the duct tape.
When you say you didn't do a comparison, why didn't you do a comparison to the fingerprint that you had?
Any of the latent prints that were developed on there were not of sufficient quality or quantity of information in order to compare them.
Do you have any evidence to show that it wasn't enough evidence for comparison?
The photographs that I took of the latent prints remain in my case file. Those are not ones that I brought with me today.
Why didn't you bring them so the jury could see them?
It's not routine for me to bring items or photographs of items that were determined to be of no value. If I had been asked to bring that, I certainly could have provided that.
If you didn't bring them, how could we all tell that it wasn't no value to them?
Your Honor, argumentative and asked and answered.
Sustained.
Would you agree that we could have got our own perception, determination, or the jury could have got their own perception or determination on what you've done if you had brought it so they can see it themselves?
Your Honor, again, argumentative, asked and answered.
Sustained again.
Okay. Gentlemen, have you heard on that?
No, sir. Continue.
Will you agree it would have been helpful in making a clear determination if you had brought it?
Again, Your Honor, asked and answered, argumentative.
Sustained again.
But I'm not asking the same question, Judge. I'm asking.
It's a different way of asking the same question each time.
How many times have you testified?
About 14.
So you're expert.
Yes.
Okay. Did you know you were going to be testifying today?
Yes.
Did the prosecutor officer tell you, hey, don't bring your other prints? Did they tell you that?
No, I was not told to not bring anything.
Okay. But you could have brought it if you wanted to, right?
Objection, asked and answered,
Sustained.
argumentative.
I didn't ask you, but she could have brought it, Judge. I don't.
Sustained.
How many fingerprints did you have? You found on the tape. How many different sets of fingerprints did you find?
I don't recall the exact number. I'd be able to provide that after looking at my case file. There were only a few. There weren't a great many of these partial latent prints.
Did you do a written report on them fingerprints that you found that you didn't bring today?
The results of my processing were from, and I don't have the state's exhibits number in front of me, but it would be from the report dated May 4th, 2011, where I state that the images of the latent prints were analyzed and only one latent print from item 7B was determined to be of value for comparison.
Okay, would you agree you say images, you didn't put a specific number on that, didn't you?
No,
Okay. Was it 3 sets, 4 sets, 5 sets, 6 sets? What was it?
I don't recall the exact number.
You didn't put it in your report either, did you?
It's not typical for us to put the exact number of all of the partial prints in our reports.
Well, when you agree that could have helped us determine what really went on with this evidence, when you agree with that?
It's possible it would have provided some further information.
When you agree there's a thorough investigation, you get everything and put everything up instead of this little bit, just a little bit of it?
Well, as I mentioned, all of these things are maintained. They are maintained in my crime lab case file in our laboratory information management system. So it's not that they don't exist anymore. They are there.
You just didn't choose to put what you maintained in your report. That's what tells us.
I did not bring those items with me to court, and it is not typical for that level of information to be provided within our reports.
You had that high from it, did you?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Sustained.
How many cases have you had that you had all the evidence, but you didn't provide any report? How many times you done this?
As I stated, it's
Your
not.
Honor, objection, asked and answered.
What rule about objection?
It is not typical for us to provide complete details within the report as to how many latents there were overall. It's usually that we refer to in our reports those latent prints that were determined to be of value, because those are the prints that we move forward in with comparisons on those prints. As I stated, their latent prints that are all developed and that are all photographed are maintained within the case file. But the case can be is reviewed before it is submitted to our website where the reports are. So it is just not something that is typically done with our reports.
Now, when you agreed that you were doing an investigation on a Mr. Jadon Brooks, when that's part of your investigation, ma'am?
He is listed as a victim on both of my reports.
Okay. Did you check Jadon Brooks' fingerprint to see if it might have been on them tapes or anything? Did you check for that?
I did not have any fingerprints from Jadon Brooks as far as known prints from Jadon Brooks.
Okay. Did anybody get? Well, how did you get Jamie Hood fingerprint then?
I explained that earlier from the Georgia State Identification Number I was provided. I printed the fingerprint card bearing the name Jamie Hood from the State Archive.
Okay. Did you get Jadon Brooks' fingerprint from the State Archives and compare here with these fingerprints, ma'am?
No, I did not.
Why you didn't?
I was not asked to do that.
Okay. Well, who asked you to get mine?
The submitting agency.
Ma'am?
The submitting agency. The police officer or the case agent who provides us with the evidence is the one who asks for the specific requests or the specific services that we provide.
So the case agent didn't ask you nothing about Jadon Brooks' fingerprint?
No, it was not listed to compare Jadon Brooks.
Okay. Is it possible Jadon Brooks' fingerprint was on that tape and you just didn't look for it and it still could be there?
Objection, argumentative, asked and answered.
Okay. So is it fair to say, hey, we didn't look for Jadon Brooks' fingerprints on there because he's the alleged victim?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding your
Is
question.
it fair to say that you didn't even bother to look for Jadon Brooks' fingerprints on that tape because he was considered as the victim?
I was not asked to look at Jadon Brooks' fingerprints. However, there are other cases that I work where I do examine victims' fingerprints.
So you have examined victim fingerprints in the past.
Yes.
Why you didn't do it in this case?
In this particular case, there was only one latent print that I determined to be of value for comparison. Once I compared that latent print to the fingerprint card bearing the name Jamie Hood, that print was identified. Therefore, there were no other prints to compare, which would not allow for any further comparisons.
But isn't it fair to say, ma'am, that you don't have no physical evidence with you to corroborate what you just said?
Objection, as argument.
Sustained.
Her testimony is evidence.
It might be heard on that too.
No, sir. Ask another question.
How about the strips of tape, ma'am? How many fingerprints you found on the strips of tape you showed, ma'am? How many fingerprints you find?
It would be the same. There were some partial prints that were developed on there. I don't have that exact number with me, but none of the latent prints that were developed on the tape, none of those were of value for comparison.
Is it possible Jadon Brooks could have been on, his fingerprint could have possibly been on there?
It's possible that Jadon Brooks' prints could be on the tape. However, I did not make a comparison to any of those partial prints.
Okay. The gun, you say you had several fingerprints on that gun too, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Tell us about them fingerprints on that gun.
Much in the same manner, they were partial prints. They were photographed, but then after my analysis, I determined them to be of no value for comparison.
You didn't bring the photograph with you, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is it possible Jadon Brooks' fingerprint could have been on that gun?
It's possible that there could be Jadon Brooks' fingerprints on the gun. I don't have any knowledge as to where the gun came from. So certainly possible, but I did not compare John Brooks' prints.
How about them 8 rounds? Tell us about the 8 rounds you found. What's that? The 8?
3 of the cartridges had latent prints developed. I determined them to be of no value for comparison.
How many print was it, ma'am? On 8?
There were 8 rounds. 3 of the rounds or cartridges, as they're stated in my report, 3 of them had a latent print on each.
Is it possible John Brooks' fingerprint could have been on them 3 rounds?
I did not compare John Brooks' fingerprints, but it is possible.
I couldn't hear you, ma'am.
I said I did not compare John Brooks' prints, but it is possible, not having any knowledge of where these items came from.
What was those 8 live rounds located at?
What do you mean by located?
Yeah, I mean, you say you had 8 rounds. I mean, was they in the gun, or how did you receive them?
They were submitted in the box in small coin envelope, those little yellow manila envelopes.
No, do you have any idea who put them there?
No, I'm assuming that the person who packaged them when they were submitted to the crime lab.
Okay. Do you know if that person might have wiped some fingerprints off them things, or do you know?
I have no knowledge of anything that happened with any of these items of evidence prior to their submission to the crime laboratory.
Was it possible somebody could have wiped some off of them?
Your Honor, objection as an answer.
For the record, there are possible other suspects out there, fingerprints that possibly could be there if you run a test on them, that could be on the fingerprints on that gun.
Objection, Your Honor, this is misleading. She has already testified there was one single print that she could identify. This is a misleading question.
She said there were several prints on the gun, Your Honor. I'm not talking about the casing, the gun. She said there was several prints on the gun. And I would ask her, is it possible that the suspect, there's possible suspects out there, and you go get them fingerprint cards like they got mine, you might get your man who touched that gun other than jail.
I'm sustaining the objection.
But no further question.
Just a few redirects. Ma'am, when we're speaking of these partial prints of no value, are any of these prints of evidentiary value?
No, they merely
Well, I
indicate.
objected to that question, Judge. He can't ask her no question that she ain't brought no evidence on, because that is misleading. She's speaking on something that she have no evidence on. So if I can't talk about it, ask about it, why he gonna do it?
I'll sustain that objection.
Wait a minute. I can't clarify what she means by a print of no value.
I think that's been, I'm not,
Well, I just
sustain-
answered
wait
that.
just a minute. I'm sustaining it on the same ask and answer grounds.
Then I've already
Tell me,
asked.
pose your question again.
My question is, with regard to partial prints and prints that are of no value, I said, are they of any evidentiary value at all? I've never asked that
I'll
question.
allow that.
No.
Okay, and why is that?
Having partial prints on an item could indicate that someone touched an item, but if there's not enough information in those partial prints, there would really be no way to tell who those prints belong to.
And would it be of any benefit to pull 10 or 15 fingerprint cards of other people to check against those?
No, if there's not enough information in those latents to achieve a comparison, then if, for example, if it's just a few ridges, there would really be no way to actually identify that to a particular person. So you wouldn't know where to start even to look on fingerprint cards or palm prints.
And given that there is no evidentiary value, is that something you would put into evidence?
No, as I said, we do document these prints so they are there in the case file to be reviewed. And all of our reports are peer-reviewed before they are issued. So there has been another scientist at the lab, a latent print examiner, who has reviewed my technical information in my case file to determine that it is technically accurate.
All right. And just so we're clear, did you find any identifiable fingerprint that is unknown at this time on any of the items that you looked at?
No.
And have you identified every print that you can identify in this case on these items?
Yes.
And who did that fingerprint belong to?
I identified the latent print of value from the magazine to the fingerprint card bearing the name Jamie Hood.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Brief. Ma'am, you just said somebody peer-reviewed your report.
Yes.
Okay. What evidence that you were peer-reviewed?
Argumentative. Her testimony is evidence.
Stein.
Okay. Do you have any written reports of the person who peer-reviewed you?
There's not a written report. There is, within our laboratory information management system, the case is assigned to another examiner in the section, and then they actually have to check off a certain area before the report can be released. So it is associated with a person, and that is maintained within our case file. It's not something that appears on the reports.
Who was the person who peer-reviewed you?
It was Lindsay Shelton.
Do you have that in your report, ma'am, that Ms. Shelton peer-reviewed your examination?
It is not listed in the reports, no.
Why not?
It's not something that we include on our reports, but there is documentation in my case file.
Well, how do we know she peer-reviewed you and we don't see it?
Actually, you see her initials on the fingerprint card that was submitted in order to achieve my identification. That has to be verified by another examiner. So the fingerprint card that I had on that slide had my initials along with Lindsay's initials.
Okay. Did she peer-review them pictures and them other fingerprints that you found that y'all didn't investigate? Did she peer-review them fingerprints on that gun?
I object, and again, that's a misleading question. There is no fingerprint to identify. She has testified there's not enough information.
I will sustain the objection based on the word. If you want to clarify, I'll allow it.
How many fingerprints you say you found on that gun, ma'am?
I stated I don't recall the exact number.
Well, the fingerprints that you did find, the one that you can't recall, what were her peer review determination on that?
In order for a case to be released, the examiner would view every piece of information within my case file in order for the report to be released.
But you have no evidence of that, do you?
Objection. Argumentative. Again, her testimony is evidence.